Welcome everybody. Welcome to the first crossfire here. What? That's what you guys think.
Depending on how you do.
That's it. So after weeks of hard work by Mr. Buck and me, Barrow, and some other guys, and of course on Hola, we're excited to have the crossfire the Pale Amish. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Basically, just a quick overview of what it is, I'm going to do now, and the rules, and then how we're going to go. So basically, we got the idea from JOI. Basically, they have usually 3-4 rabbis or professors or whatever exactly the topic is, and they're sitting next to each other, and there's questions. The kind of trick where the thing is, the finish over here is that they have 60 seconds to answer the question. And some people think, that's annoying, that's too short, which sometimes it is, but that's the point. It's not the person answering it and the person that's being answered, because it's learning how to make something with kitzur. It's also making something very simple. On the other hand, also, it could be sorry, because sometimes some things do need more explanation. But the point is just, I guess, you may ask, are we doing it here? I'm saying, we're Buckers, what's the point? But I think, in a way, it's more relevant here than anywhere else. Because with Buckers, we have a lot of questions, and that's normal. That's how it is. But I think a lot of times questions get overlooked. And Q&A is great, but a lot of times people have more questions because they don't have time to answer them, or they want other opinions from different people, or they want different perspectives. So I think it's the best opportunity you can get more of a perspective, and you can see how people answer, how they do things, yeah. So the way it's actually going to work is like this. Each person will get average 67 questions. They'll have 60 seconds to answer that question. I'm going to be timing this, so it's going to be 60 seconds exactly, not any longer. If they do go longer, I'll probably tell them to stop because they have 60 seconds and not any longer. Then what's going to happen is, after that, if someone decides the person to answer the question has another opinion, they're welcome to say their opinion.
Does that have more than 60 seconds?
If someone has another opinion, like one of the earlier, they can do that, and there's no time for that. Meaning, obviously, 10 minutes are not going to go, but the point is, it's going to take a little bit longer. But after every question, is someone going to rebuttal or say I disagree, because first of all, a lot of things are going to agree with, and second of all, we don't have all day here. So that's that. At the end, so there's a give or take about 20 questions. At the end, you guys will have a chance to ask questions. Obviously, do it in a considerate way. Ask them nicely and politely. And any comments, whatever it is, you can say that. During the actual crossfire, please ask them to everybody to be no interrupting, no loudness, nothing, because the whole point is not to hear them all. They want to hear their opinion, want to hear how they learn the things, do research, and it's not fair if people aren't able to hear clearly. Are there any questions anybody has right now before we get going?
Was that questions pre-asked?
Yes, I think that's a good point. The questions, these are about a week and a half ago, and they had that time to research them if they needed to ask to the occurs, whatever exactly they need to do. And the other thing is that only their questions they know, meaning, for example, Rabbi Benjamin does not know Rabbi Levin's questions. So if he wants to say something that he disagrees with, he's welcome to, but he didn't have any time to look at that before.
He thinks they're questions.
Whenever asking questions is also
No, so they have more time to ask questions if they want that. Oh, no, that's fine. Whatever you guys want. You can have longer if you want. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to start now. First question goes to Rabbi Levin over here. Why are Chassidim called Chassidim?
Is a clock ticking with a buzzer?
Yeah. Stay right down.
So, it's the Russian. I might get stuck in the middle. The 60 seconds will be up. But in Hayom Yom Chaf Aleph Oder Aleph, it says that the name Chassid is an old name, an old title. We find it in Chazal in the first human being, Adam Barishon. He was already called Adam, a Chassid. And the Chassid shows on a shleimus and a aflaga, a person that's very successful, very well done, either a seichel or midas or both together. By Chassidus Chabad, when we use the term Chassid, we mean someone that recognizes himself. He knows his own madrega, he's honest with himself, what we call intellectually honest. He also knows what he's missing, and he's serious about working on himself and helping himself to come to a better place. And he's he's marbeh. He spends a lot of time in mishmas and even of Kabbalah. So the general name of Chassid means someone that's
Rabbi, your time's up. Thank you for that. Anybody want to rebuttal or say something different or disagree with that?
What's wrong with what it says? He's al Chassid am Chassid in Koine.
Yeah.
That's a Russian from Zoya, and if I would be able to speak more, I might have gotten there. But
Rizek, do you want to add anything? Alright. Well, next question is pretty good anyway. So can I secretly monitor my child's social media?
The question there is coming, the simple answer is that as long as you're under the tutelage of somebody, as in under your parents, under a holiday you put yourself under, then the answer is you can. They have their shus to check and watch what you're doing. However, there's a clear understanding, if you want, or not a clear understanding, but a basic tenet that most of the stuff that we're trying to educate our children or whoever it is not to look at, and that we're trying to protect them, is not going to come from watching and being a hawk over every little thing that's being done, rather through education, through chinuch, and properly explaining to your children, to those that are under you, what the reasons are for whatever it may be that you're trying to protect them from.
You guys want to add anything?
I have
Yeah,
change,
you have
right?
10 seconds.
Extra, okay.
For next question.
You guys want to add? Alright. Next question goes to Ben Shimon. What is the reason for saying Parak Aleph before davening?
First of all, I don't think it's a thing of it's saying and thinking and having it in mind. And if you just look at the first words of Tanya when he starts Parak Aleph, he writes clearly, meaning that it's something which is supposed to be in your mind the whole time. And right after the word Tevis Hamel, that's how the Rebbe writes it. You're supposed to think about this, you're supposed to be misboinen in this every single day. But before davening, the Rebbe writes it clearly. So the Bishas so the Rebbe tells us that clearly, and that is obvious for the reason that you're thinking about how the Eibusher is standing in front of you. And we all know that the first thing of davening, you could say maybe is more important to Pirish Hamilis, is to just understand that the Eibusher is standing in front of you and you're talking to the Eibusher. So it would be a very obvious and common sense to help that somebody before he davens, he thinks how the Eibusher is standing right in front of him, the Eibusher is watching him, and he has to follow whatever the Eibusher says, and then with that, he goes on davening. So obviously that's a very good hakadamah for this entire day.
You guys want to add anything to what he said?
Probably shouldn't ask us every time. If you want to add, we'll just raise our hands.
Alright. Next question goes to Rabbi Levin. Does the Rebbe speak about eating Lubavitch Shechita? And if so, what exactly does he say about that?
So there's two questions here. I need to have 120 seconds.
We'll see. Maybe at the end we'll give you actually 20 seconds.
If so, then I have to get another one. So in general, the term Lubavitch Shechita is a new term. The term always was Hasidish Shechita. That was the term that the Rebbe was Mechadish. And it's a relatively new thing. The only famous source for the term Lubavitch Shechita from the Rebbeim is the Rebbe had Yechidus once with Rabbi Handel from Montreal. Where there the Rebbe used the term Lubavitch Shechita. And that Yechidus, the exact details are not so clear, but the point was the Rebbe said that it's a chassid that learns, a sheikhet that learns Chassidus Chabad is considered, when he's sheikh, is considered Lubavitch Shechita. And the Rebbe also said that this is the way the Kabbalah, the tradition is, that the Rebbe told him Lubavitch Shechita means that the Rebbeim will take a chayes, that the Shechita will come out kosher. So that was the question, that was basically the answer. More discussions about it, but that wasn't part of the question. Right?
Thank you. Anybody want to add to that or rebuttal?
Yes, I want to add is that from what I understand was that Rabbi Handel was saying that it's time to make Lubavitch. He wanted to make Lubavitch Shechita, that the Shoptim in Montreal, Lubavitchers, they should be the one which shechs. So the Rebbe said that Lubavitcher, hey, is somebody which learns Chassidus. But I want to clarify that you don't find anywhere in any letter from the Rebbe or any Sikh or any Hayrat to anybody that you have to make Lubavitch Shechita. It doesn't say it anywhere. And I believe that if it's something that you really strongly have to be makbid on, you would have seen the Rebbe speak about it in another place or a clear letter from the Rebbe. But you don't find anywhere in anything public, anywhere public where the Rebbe uses the term of Lubavitch Shechita.
In the earlier Chabad, there was no Lubavitch Shechita, and in Kanais they were using the Belzer Shechita until they started Lubavitch Shechita. Obviously, Shechita has to be Shemayim, somebody that Lubavitcher that talks, if it doesn't go to davening, if it doesn't go to mitzvah, or lacks in other parts of your Shemayim. There's a shayla, is that what the gather of Lubavitcher Shechita, or do we want that's a Chassidus Shechita, somebody that's here Shemayim is very, very careful. Just a small antidote. I was speaking to a Polish Shechit about it. He said there was a certain Shechit by the name of Brickman, Issa Brickman, I believe it was. It says that the cows used to stick their neck out for him in such a Shemayim, but they saw it, the way he prepared himself for the Shechita was such a Shemayim. But for Derech Klal, you don't have such a thing, but you need to have somebody that is a Yir Shemayim, also that is nicker in his whole being, the way he fears it, that is Yir Shemayim.
Alright. Thank you. Next question goes to Rabbi Ben Shimon. Could we use technology to build the third base of Mikdash?
There's no problem in halacha in using technology, but from the spirit of that question, it sounds like as if we're going to help the Eibush out in the base of Mikdash. The base of Mikdash is going to be more cool because you could maybe pay with a credit card, or maybe the building is going to be a little more fussy. But just from the description of how the Bayis Yishon was Shleim and which whatever went on with the water system and all the other chachmas within the chilas and everything, I think Shleim HaMelech's chachma reaches way further than any technology could imagine. Also, we have to understand that the whole technology, which is being Mizgal, that's all in the aim, there's also love, which is going to be so much greater. We know Asar Nisim Nasr, I was saying in the Beis HaMikdash. Beis HaMikdash Ashlishi is going to be so much greater that the technology is going to be a little joke. So obviously, we're expecting and anticipating something way greater and way holier. So the Eibush will take care of us if we're building the Beis HaMikdash in a much greater way than any technology could ever imagine.
Perfect. Anybody want to add or rebuttal? All right. Next question goes to Rabbi Zirkin. Is investing in stocks considered gambling?
To start off, there's something called an asmachta. Asmachta is when you're relying on something when you make a deal or whatever it is in business. There's machlekes in the Paskim and in the Shulchan Aruch and Mechaber Ramah if asmachta kanya b'chlal and is dice, somebody who's playing dice, which is called random luck. Is that considered, is that mutter or not? Generally, somebody plays dice, we say it's aser, is pasul edus. So the question is gambling and similarly lottery the same thing as in just playing with the luck, or is there a methodology to it? Seemingly from the Paskim in general, they agree that stock market in general is fine, because it seems to be that there is a methodology, especially being that in the machlekes is when you're buying a stock, are you buying a part of the company or are you buying rights? And seemingly you're buying into the company according to Moshe. However, according to the
Time's up.
I think it would be important to add is that many people ask the Rebbe about it, but the Rebbe clearly says there's no problem with it, meaning that what the Rebbe says is ein dai tinoicha miknei asher, that the Rebbe is not happy about it. The previous Rebbeim did invest in the stock market, the Rebbe Rashab, but the Rebbe says he's not happy about it because of the pizur hanefesh. When someone's in the stock market the entire day, he's totally locked in and doesn't give the person the menucha that he needs. And so therefore the Rebbe is not happy about it, and it's not a way how to, gain up on really, but the Rebbe is not sure to do it.
All right, Shimon, is there a way to figure out my specific life's purpose?
Well, obviously the purpose of somebody, when you're saying life's purpose is obviously clear that it has to be a agent elikim, to spread Yiddishkeit. But Eibush did give everybody certain talents and certain chayvus, which somebody could use out, and he's supposed to use them out, to the fullest potential. Obviously, in the right way. The Eibush created everybody differently, gave everybody different chayvus, and usually that's somebody could tell, what's this cow. Usually he gets guided and he gets the money, and it wasn't, where he's supposed to, which area he's supposed to invest in life, and someone's supposed to keep his eye out, and this is also something which someone's supposed to turn to other people to mashpiyim, and ask, because sometimes somebody from the outside could see better. But there haven't many times you see in the letters, he says, since you ended up in a certain place, it's Hafgach, they put you in a certain place, this and that. So the stava, this is what it's supposed to be. When somebody fights it too much and he tries to fight it,
Time's up. All right, next question. Rabbi Zirkin, how do we allow people to drive to shul on Shabbos?
We don't. The general question is, you have Chabad houses that they have a bunch of alvatim that they unfortunately drive to shul on Shabbos. How do we do it? The Rebbe seems to imply that first of all you have to give them the places that they can stay for Shabbos. If you can, that's you can invite them to your house. I guess I'll answer that you're mailim ayin. You have to turn away. Tell them not. This is what God says, and that you're not supposed to. Chaim Shapiro from Morristown had a chavrusa of his. And this chavrusa lived a half hour away. He used to come to his shul on Shabbos. So he asked him, does God want me to drive to shul on Shabbos or daven at home on Shabbos? So Chaim Shapiro answered him that God wants you to daven at home on Shabbos. I believe is what he answered. But really what he wants you to do is to buy a house closer to the shul that you don't have to be Mechal Shabbos.
A lot of the,
Yeah, good for you.
I know a lot of shluchim are, they emphasis very much that their parking lot should be closed. You know, since they're Chabad and they have a shul, you can't allow people just driving into your parking lot. So I know that they're very makbid on that, and that, you know, if someone drives, it's not their business, but they shouldn't give any hand to them. It should be clear, like that it's not them. There's no driving, so they can make sure that there's no, you know, that their own parking lot is shut.
All right, next question goes from 11. What should the goal with Bocher in Yeshiva be?
That Shmuel basically answered before, but every person's specific purpose.
I have the eyes, they cut me out, so you can finish the.
Every person has to be a goal of Rachel Yeshiva should be a chassid, a shamayim around to grow in all areas, as personal aveda and as aveda mazulas.
Thank you.
Because even if he doesn't know where he's holding, where he wants to go, he has to work and he has to try to figure out what he wants by learning and speaking to his mashpiyim and speaking to different chavedim that are going to influence you positively.
So I'll use some time to, you know, there's somebody here, you know, they decided that his shlichus is maybe somewhere else. It's not the place where he is. So he tried one time going somewhere else, tried something. Every time it didn't work out. So eventually he got the hint that when you're in a certain place and you're doing a certain way, that you don't just go and decide, oh, maybe because I have a time to go to somewhere else. So you know, so you do have something else. Maybe it puts you in a place and you have the thing. So you have to understand that it's probably your tafkid. Everything is about tafkid, unless you see it's mamish not working out. But if somebody, his tafkid was in limud atayid, teaching, the Rebbe says that if that's your place, and then, you know, you're supposed to be happy with it, and, you know, and that's what it's supposed to be. There are people, you know, that they're bali asek, but they're able to tell that their kav is more in asek, you know, more in the thing. So that's because their kav, and they're supposed to do that in the oifen of you know, following obviously, you know, the guidance of Torah.
Berserkin, is a Jew allowed to be an organ donor for a non-Jew?
It's a complicated question in general. I don't, 60 seconds will not do it justice. So the answer is depends, obviously, like everything else in Jewish law, especially when it comes to medical halacha. It is very, very iffy, and each situation has to be asked up. In general, we have two concepts, something called Eva, which means that will they look down at us and will they start being very jealous of the Yidden? And number two, will by me not giving to a Goy cause another Yid not to receive the donor? For we see that the blood donors, blood donations that are given in general, and it's given to non-Jewish hospitals in certain locations, it's given the Jewish drives, that way that when the Yidden need it, they get it faster. You have different parts of donations that I'm going to be cut off on this one. But you have live donors and you have donors after death, and in death there's a machleket. There's a question: what is death? Whether it's brain death, whether it's heart cessation irreversibly, or is it true death? Before.
Continue.
You can ask the same question after. He said afterwards there's any questions. So if someone still has a question after, you need to answer more. You can always ask that.
All right, Rabbi 11. Why did Rashi's daughters wear tefillin?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Can you speak louder?
Sure. Why did Rashi's daughters wear tefillin?
So it seems like there's no valid source for that. There's no valid source. It's an accepted agoda in the world. There's no valid source. The only valid source is from Chazal, is from Michal Bashol, that she wore tefillin. One of the main reasons why women are not supposed to wear tefillin is because of a guf noki and the right kavana, and she had to be a very big tzaddikus to do so. I just read a story that there was a tzaddikus a few years ago, like 150 years ago, that she was once very sick. She was in a coma. When she woke up, she told her father, who was also a tzaddik, that she just got a new neshama, and from then on she started wearing talis and tefillin every day, and behaving in a sense like a man. But in general, it was only special tzaddikus of its mashma. There was also a rumor about the Irachai Bakadish's wife, but that also seems to be not reliable. So the only reliable woman is Chazal, is Michal Bashol, and that's all the story that I got in there. Ask him permission to speak. Shima wants to ask something.
You can go back and ask it. All right, next question. Rabbi Ben Shimon, explain an instrument contrary to the way a Chassidish Bocher is supposed to conduct himself.
Playing an instrument should be fine. Something which is a mikdash, and something you know music, shira. Obviously, there's a Chassidish nigunim, there's a Baruch nigunim. Everything could be done in a better way, and everything could be used out for kedusha. So it's just something you should be careful with. The shira brings out, you know, put it from the heart. Therefore, instruments in general could be used for a very good purpose. However, we know that in the Beis Harav they did not allow guitar. Guitar was something which they didn't allow. That instrument was questionable. They didn't allow it. People say that a guitar also wasn't from the kelim which the Levium had in the Beis Hamikdash. So that's why they didn't let it. They didn't let it in. But you could also see b'chosh that there's a difference if someone's playing a keyboard like that or a bass. But when it comes to guitar, I think that there's one to be extra careful with.
Like one of my mashpiyim that the music, the chlal, haraya to yourself to help know if it's a good or a positive music, is where does the emotion start coming out from? Does it start coming from the moyach, from the lave, from the lower end of the body, or other places? And if it's and based on that is haraya mitzvah to be able to know right away if it's a good music or not.
All right, next question is going to go to Rabbi Zirkin. Can I use vaccines made from fetal tissue or non-kosher animals?
Vaccines in general, or medication in general, the question you have is could you inject something which is not kosher? Kosher is generally only also when it's injected orally from your mouth. When it's injected in another way, usually it's not an Isser unless a basar b'chalav or yain nesach. That being said, the question is, could you have hana, which is more the shayla, because fetal matter, which is basically body part, stuff from body, from aborted tissue or whatever it is, could you have hana from such a thing when it was done? That's number one. A lot of medical stuff is taken from the Nazis trying that on the Yidden. Reality is, was it allowed to be done? No. Do we have hana? 100%. You're allowed to have hana once it's done. That being additionally, mostly you're having trials done on the fetal tissue, not that the injections are containing the fetal tissue.
All right, next question goes to Rabbi Levin. What is the hardest thing for Rabbi and the Shliach in specific?
So, the rabbi, that wasn't the first one. Whatever, but the shliach, I'm not a shliach in Chabad, it's hard for me to say. But I think every person has his own individual shlichus. I would think that the hardest thing that will be universal is to juggle what's the right responsibilities. And every shliach has an obligation to his Chabad house, and he has his avodah matzma, his own shiurim and avodah Hashem, and he has the obligation to his family. So I think that every person, some people have struggle with money or other things, but I think that the most general thing, which would be equal for everybody, would probably be that question, how to juggle the responsibilities.
I would like to add, I think what could answer the question better, Rabbi, Shliach, whatever, or maybe could add, but you could even add the word bacher to that, is to live up to your title.
And in living up to that title is that you have to remember that you're a Jew first, and that you have a mitzvah of living up Torah. And when if you don't learn Torah by yourself, and you don't keep yourself Jewish, then it's very hard to keep somebody else Jewish, or to bring somebody else closer.
And Shimon, what is Chabad's approach to the evil eye?
The Rebbe Derech Klal is not the machtop, this Indian of the Ayin Hardet. The Rebbe tells somebody, it's a famous, it's brought down in Gemara, the mandalay copied like Kedinle. If someone he doesn't pay too much attention to it, then he's not machted on it, so then they're not machted on him as well. Especially if he's connected to Torah Mitzvah, connected to the Rebbeim, so then the Klal, he's higher than that, and there's nothing what to fear from. If someone's really afraid, so then the Rebbe gives him a school as though and Darton, to help him out. But in general, the Rebbe's approach is not to be afraid of it. If you're not afraid of it, that itself helps. But it's also important to note that you do find a lot of times the lashon from the Rebbe himself, but the Rebbe writes bli ayin hara, ayin hara is on the chat, means that there is such a thing. But if you go on the right way, so then you're secure.
All right, Rabbi Zirkin, what side of the mechitza should a gay or a transgender person sit?
Okay, the gay I don't think is a shayla. Okay, because a gay person has to do what he is. The shayla is somebody that's
The person next to him.
That's it. That's all I'm talking about. Okay. Somebody who is transgender and looks like another gender. We're going to take one side over here. Somebody who is a born female and decided to become a male. This is a machlekes. In general, we could say that somebody who is not making a big deal about it and look like it, we could say that they could be in the men's section. However, they cannot be down for the amid. They should not be making brachas on tefillin, and they have to be very careful. The B'negeya, if they're being overt, not overt, if they're being loud about it, that, I'm trans, then you might be able to say room that they don't belong in the men's section either, and that you have to put them into a third section. This is Talid Dasin Hamid over there on this Al-Asar, that you have to see what's going on, if you should be in the men's section, or should be in the third section for those that are not sure where they're going.
I didn't look into it too much, so that's why whatever I'm saying is my own idea. But whatever he is biologically, that's the section he sits in, and if he has an issue with that, then an issue, so then he could be quarantined.
You're saying that he's a male
Whatever it is, biologically, if he's a male.
there's a shiloh of hirur that comes through. If a person looks like a female and he's really born male, then there's a shiloh of hirur for him to be in the men's section. I think all the persons is a shiloh. Although I hear you shiloh, you have to take chumra l'kan. You can't just necessarily.
My understanding is no, he can't sit in another section. He has an issue with that section, so there's special rooms for people in there.
Thanks, Shimon. What can I do to continue to feel the inspiration I felt in yeshiva when I'm home? I'm Ben Azmanim.
To feel the inspiration is not really shy. Inspiration is not something which happens every single day, and somebody doesn't live, somebody is not inspired in daily time. But what a person could do is that when he is in inspiration, he should set goals and aklatas what he's going to do when he is home. He has to be very realistic with what goals he's taking, and the true inspiration comes from Torah. Meaning, once he sets a goal that even when he's going to be home, he's going to learn at least the Perek Echad Shabbos, Perek Echad Arvis, so the Torah itself is going to do the job that a person shouldn't go down from his level. But to have the same avir, the same feeling and everything like you have in yeshiva, so usually it doesn't come so easy to get it at home. But obviously at home you can look for different farbrengen, and you can look for different connections. But what the important point is that he should, before he goes home, he should have a very set, clear haflata and goal what he's going to try to keep every single day that he's home.
11. Is the Torah demeaning towards women?
So we call Rabbi Seinu Nisiyenu, that the title for the Rebbein is Dinenu Meirenu Verabbeinu. Meirenu means our teacher. The way he teaches us Torah. The way the Rebbein teaches us Torah is in a way that's bechlal not demeaning towards women. So one famous example is the Gemara Psochen Kufid Aleph on the Aleph. The Gemara says, Tonu Rabbono Shloisha im bematzin v'lo mismatzin. There are three things that you can't go between and don't allow to go between you. Ve'elu hein. These are the three: a kelev, a dog, a dekel, a palm tree, v'ha'isha, and a woman. V'yeshem im afa chazer, v'yeshem im afa nachash. This is the way the Gemara says it is very demeaning. However, when the Alter Rebbe says these halachas, the Alter Rebbe says, Lo yaver ish ben shtei noshim, v'lo isha ben shnei anoshim. A man shouldn't walk between two women, and a woman shouldn't walk between two men. And so on, other things. What the Alter Rebbe teaches us Torah is in a very clear way that gives a lot of the recheretz, and the Rebbe Sichas is even more than that, and the Rebbe gives a
Is my teacher responsible for my confiscated smartphone if it was damaged?
The question here seemingly is assuming it's a confiscated item, or it can be divided into two: confiscated item that he's expecting to get back versus something he's not expecting to get back. Something that was taken away that against the rules of the yeshiva, and he's not expected to back, but he decided he wants to argue it out, that he should get it back. There should be no obligation on the yeshiva if it got ruined, because there was no obligation. If the Hanhol decides to go back, then lucky you. If it's something that was understood that it's supposed to come back, then comes together whether we're considered Hanhol is considered Shemer Sacha or Shemer Chinam in this regard. However, he has to treat it properly. If it was though together of an oinus that he treated as best he could, something happened, oinus is potter.
Let me just add a nice story which once happened. So it was once a bachar that had his phone taken away, and he decided as it was taken away, so he advanced in his avodah in yeshiva, and he comes to me one day and he said, you know what, I don't want to get the phone which I'm holding. I don't want to have it back. I want to smash it. So I said, he's smashing it already. Let's make a whole mitzvah out of the smashing. We'll take it. We'll take a hammer, put it in a bag. We'll take a video, and we'll see Biyarta or Mikerbecha. And smash the hammer. So he brings it. I take the video. We put it in the bag. We're about to break it. Just before he's break it, I said, you're sure it's your phone? Yeah. He's like, yeah, for sure, it's my phone. I said, just turn it on. Make sure you see all the contacts. I don't want to mistake someone else's phone. Right before he opens it up, and lo and behold, it's another bacher's phone. Remember the story of Rabbi Hershko?
Shimon, is the Holocaust a punishment from Hashem?
There's still people alive today which suffered from the Holocaust. It was a tragedy which is beyond as anybody could ever imagine. To sit now and to say, oh, by the way, you lost your whole family, by the way, you should know. That's a punishment from Hashem. Hashem told you, if you're not going to listen, that's what's going to happen. Call him over to the side. I think your son, he was speaking during the Lars Hashanah the past few weeks. So I think I understand why. It's not our job, it's not our position to go and to say that whatever happened, a tragedy like that, it's a punishment from the Eibishter, and I told you so. And everyone has to understand that when you say on someone else that there's a punishment from the Eibishter, it means that you're accepting that same thing on yourself. That if you do anything wrong, that same kind of punishment, that you're willing and you're passing, that you could take the same thing. And it's something which is understood. You're talking about a situation where there's 1.5 million children which died, and over 1 million from a Yidden Yirein.
Oh, yeah, time's up. 11. What is the job of Bachar Shliach in Yeshiva?
Said, he added what he said.
Yeah, sure. You want to add?
Which word was they holding by? I'm on the second there. When you have so many, even the Malach HaMavet will take all the Aveis together and pile them up. A punishment like that is not really shy. It doesn't really fit. If somebody himself was tortured in the Holocaust and he wanted to say, okay, if someone wants to do it to himself, he could do it. Our tafkid is not to judge anybody else and not to say it's a punishment because we can't be, because we have to have a time to the Eibishter, we have to cry to the Eibishter, we have to feel their pain, and we have to say that we don't understand it. So no matter which kind of hezbollah there is, there's no hezbollah which is ever gonna explain, a story like that. What we could learn from it, which the Rebbe tells us, is that us following the ways of the Goyim and becoming buried in there and becoming fine daishin that didn't help us at all, and if anything that made it worse. The Holocaust, the Rebbe does compare it to a operation when you have to fix something up very seriously. Something needs to have a fix. What happened was obviously we got elevated to a higher target, but why it had to happen at this place and so painful, that's something which is very much the base of and we feel the pain, and we try today that we should have the gula, and we shouldn't have to experience anything like that.
Number 11. What is the job of Bachar Shliach in Yeshiva?
Bachar Shliach in Yeshiva has to be mechazik the Yeshiva. Mechazik the Yeshiva, and the simple way of doing it is by going to Seder, learning in Seder. That's the first thing. The second thing is to learn with Bachrim, which also is mechazik the Bachrim individually. And the third thing, which is a chiddush of the past few years, is to make mitzvahs also. But that's the achrin, not chaviv. The ikir is to come to Seder and to learn in Seder, and then learn with Bachrim also.
And another note is all the attention which they give to Bachar. A lot of times needs to have all the Bachar beside all the Bachar learning with him, and just sitting and being there as a chavus or a dugmachai, with the fact that the shliach is just sitting and giving time and attention, which that could be achrin, maybe the hardest part, maybe even the most annoying part, but that's a very important thing, which every child, a child leaves his house and he's pampered over there with attention. He comes to the yeshiva, he gets much less of that, so that's another important role which a shliach fills in for every Talmud.
Rabbi Zurkin, does Judaism allow jaywalking or speeding?
The question here is, depends which angle you're coming from. So there's dinah malchus dinah, and then you have the concept of an ishmarta moed as nafshi seichem. When you give an ishmarta moed nafshi seichem, a person has to make sure that they are safe, and if it's a safe way to do it, then that doesn't exist. Dinah the malchus dinah is what we're going to come to next, which is a famous question. Am I allowed to cross the street? Am I allowed to go 5 miles above the speed limit? If there's nobody coming by the red light, am I allowed to go by there? Seemingly, the government, when they made these rules, there were certain rules that were made with a clear allowance, or in case, and therefore there's no problem of dinah, the machusa dinah in that case, especially where, as long as there's safety involved in that. And in general, the question as well goes is what is dinah machusa dinah, in which there are many shittas where we're holding the Alter Rebbe seemingly takes a much more lenient shitta. Perfect.
You could add yourself.
We'll continue later.
Rabbi Shimon, why should we continue to believe that Mashiach will come every day if every day that goes by proves us wrong?
The belief in Mashiach is not that not that I wake up in the morning, I know for sure 100% Mashiach is coming today. The more it's brought down, when's Mashiach coming today? I mean that I'm waiting and I am anticipating very much that Mashiach is coming today, and I'm waiting for him every single day. And if he doesn't come today, then I'm waiting for him tomorrow. To prove it wrong is if I'm saying 100% and I know for a fact that something's happening to happen today and it doesn't happen, then it's called proving wrong. But in our situation, when the Rebbe tells us that we're the Dor of Mashiach, so actually every day which goes by and waiting for him and he doesn't come, that actually makes that the day afterwards there's more chances that, okay, so if it didn't come yesterday, that's it, the time's running out, so it's obviously coming, it's obviously more chance that it's coming today. So the waiting for Mashiach actually increases from day to day, and it's time to gear ourselves because the chances are doubling and tripling every single day, and as time is going by.
All right, the way it's going to work, there's 2 questions left. This one's going to go to 11, and then at the end, last question, everyone's going to get a chance of the 3 panelists to answer it, because it's a question that's going to get to all of them. So 11. Last question for the 11 is, what is the problem with pornography, and what should we do if one is addicted?
It's also 2 questions. Yeah, it's 2 separate questions. But the problem with it, the best place to understand the problem is Kudras Aveda Perek Beis. While the Rebbe speaks over here, how important it is for a person to control himself, to be magdid himself, to close his eyes, and he says that Chush HaRe'iyah, Emes HaRe'iyah, this is a siba agriremes lekol davar ra. Looking at not appropriate things is the reason for all bad, and it brings the complete bad. He has a whole arichas continuing about it, how the biggest time, the biggest pleasure of a person is in Re'iyah. That's when we see that even people that are Ivdei Hashem, when they see something, it has an effect on them. And Elamai, if they're Ivdei Hashem, then even though they see something, it doesn't have a long-lasting effect, but it has some kind of effect. Someone that's not such a big Ivdei, doesn't really work on himself. That's only the first question.
No, continue.
All right, not too long.
It's not. It's
fine, go ahead,
you can read the whole thing.
Yeah, the second part of that.
The second part of this, the question is what's considered addiction, which is really another question. I can reserve another minutes for that also. So what's addiction? So I heard from someone that addiction, there was a person in the Holocaust that he had one piece of bread left and he knew if he's not going to eat this, he's going to die. But he really wanted to smoke a cigarette. He was addicted to cigarettes. So he exchanged his bread for a cigarette, and he smoked the cigarette, and he died. So the definition of addiction means that you're willing to do something which you know is damaging to you, and afal b'chein, you can't control yourself. So there's many, when it comes to this topic, when it comes to the definition of addiction, there are many different opinions. There's something called a 90-day challenge, where a person can test himself for 90 days. There's also the question what madrega is considered shmiras hayinayim and so on. So the mail you have to first make sure that the question is attack at such a level that it's considered a clinical addiction. It's a clinical addiction meaning that the person lost all control over himself, and even though he knows he's hurting himself, but he's going to die because he has to have his fix. In that case, he has to go to a professional. He has to, just like any addiction, a person has to go to a professional.
All right.
I wanted to add that no matter how much is explained, how much you learn from Dias and Surdas, and how much it has a bad effect in a Bachar Yeshiva, how much it takes him out, and how much a person can grow obviously Avodas Hashem if he's involved in that. I wanted to add is that you should know that the worst part and everything is yet to come. Meaning that it doesn't start and end of the year, what kind of effect it has on someone, someone now, but it's something which could have an effect later, and then when you come later, it's already a lot of damage is done, which somebody would use today, he doesn't see how much it's damaging him, but he doesn't know how much it's really damaging him down the road. And back in the second part of the question about addiction, that is just how much, just like Rabbi Levin said, there's different levels of addiction. That, again, that's another indication of how important it is for somebody to be careful, because if he's not careful, so then he ends up in the level 1 of addiction, level 2 of addiction, level 3 of addiction. One of the levels of addiction is that even on Shabbos, the person needs to have it. So how much more so does that? That's another damage which we just see is the fact that it's addicting, and then to get out of it is going to be way harder.
All right. So the way this is the last question, the way it's going to work is the following. I'm going to ask the question, and we're going to start with Rabbi Shimon, we're going to go to Rabbi Levin, and then Rabbi Zirkin. and then they each can add on some of their other people if they want to. And afterwards, there's going to be questions, obviously in an order way, on what was said before, or any comments and the like, but no other questions that are new questions because it is not the point of this. So the last question is, starting with Rabban Shimon, what is something you wished you did differently as a Bacher in Yeshiva?
Okay?
What is something you wish you did differently as a Bacher in Yeshiva?
I would have done different from the Bacher.
No, I'm saying, yeah, what did you do that you wish you did differently when you were a Bacher?
Maybe learn more like on my own, whatever I feel, maybe more of the time, and instead of like trying to please and like to be like exactly in the yeshiva in the start, which is very important. I did also, but I think I put too much focus on that instead of maybe like thinking on my own growth, like how like this is something which I need to have for life and everything, and maybe that should have been my focus more than just I was a little bit too much trying to please Manal, please the Mashgiach, and please that. All those things are very important to follow all the Seder, but I don't know if that should have really been my focus as much.
Chazor, I chazed a lot more. Learned a lot that I never went back to what I did, and I would have retained whatever I learned.
In regard to Chazorah, so this is one thing that I regret doing, because I convinced my Menahel that I could do Gemara Bal-Peh without having to know the names and psukim of Amiris and not necessarily know the psukim of that. And I regret it to this day, because if you know the names, you could compare with when you're learning, and when you know psukim, you obviously know the context and you know the Tanakh a lot better. That's number one. And number two is when, in retrospect, I had my mashgiach and he used to give special tests on Girsa. The tests were 10-question multiple choice tests with 2 hours to fulfill the test. And you needed it. And I used to sit and laugh at it. I used to pass them, but I used to make a whole challenge out of it. I feel that if I would have paid more attention to that the way he did it, the learning of mine would have been a lot better and more lishma, because he Mama's taught how to learn. He learned from Gans.
All right. So before this question, I just want to make a few kind of disclaimers or announcements, and then we're going to go to questions. So also the entire point of this was I kind of explained the kitzur, but the point was more also to see, like I said, different opinions and stuff, but to see that people can disagree, but in a healthy way, and you should really hear other people's opinions. Obviously, if they're healthy, I'm saying if they're healthy, it's a different discussion, but assuming they're healthy, and to then be able to debate whatever it is in a healthy way. At the end of the day, still see that everybody's not going to agree on 100%, but to see that everyone's different and has a way of looking at things. But that's why it's the world. That's why we're different. That's why we're put here. Also, I just want to say in general that, especially not a lot of questions, but really everything, there's no maskanas here. Obviously, these were kitzur questions in 60 seconds, as we said, and please don't make any maskanas off of anything in the mindset. Please ask your Orthodox rabbi or your Mashri or whatever exactly it is.
Whoever wants to hear on a certain thing, go over privately and ask more.
Or yeah, even that, go over to exactly answer the question and just ask more on it, but don't just make conclusions based off of that. Also, the plan is that throughout the rest of the year, we'll probably have a couple more of these with Damala, but the main goal is to have these with Bachrim, and we'll go out and talk about that later on, but that's kind of the point if you're wondering about that. So now the way we're going to have question answer session is going to be, you're going to raise your hand, I'm going to call you, and you're going to ask your question, and you're not time, but don't make it too long, and then we're going to go to the next person. Hopefully you can answer these questions, and then you can enjoy the refreshments over there. So any questions, please raise your hand, and I'm happy to answer them. Hats off.
Zerkin, you know that a vaccine has an unborn fetus, and you know for sure it has. Are you able to take it?
What?
Are you able to take it?
First of all, it doesn't.
But if it does,
Secondly,
if it does,
first of all, it doesn't. And second of all, if it does, which it doesn't, then you're allowed to.
Are you? Say it again.
This is Rabbi Levin. It's known part that Beis Hillel usually goes more lenient than Beis Shammai. And I'm sure the Varcham, I think it was Rabbi Zerkin or Yechiel, that it takes more seichel to go L'chula than L'chumra. And you gave a shir on Hanukkah that says the reason why we go like Beis Hillel nowadays, and we go by Mashiach, we're going to go like Beis Shammai after Mashiach comes, is because Beis Hillel, although Beis Shammai was smarter, but Beis Hillel was right, so they always had the advantage, they had the majority, so we go by them. Right? But when Mashiach comes, we're all going to be intelligent, more intelligent like Beis Shammai, so they're going to be the right, we're going to be like them. So if it takes more brains to be the Kula than the Chumrah, then how is it that Beis Hillel could always go with Kula over Beis Shammai even though Beis Shammai is smarter?
No. So I'm saying it wasn't just a question. There's a very good question, but it wasn't a negaya. So I'm saying they may not be able to answer on the spot. But if whoever wants to answer, feel free to answer if you can answer.
The question is not on the whole drasha. The question is on their word. The Gemara says that Beis Shammai were smarter. So right, as soon as you heard that word the first time, that you have to be smarter to be mekel, so you could have asked right away which Beis Shammai were smarter. So that doesn't mean that every time whoever's smarter will be mekel. It means that a Rav, in order to be mekel, has to know how to learn better. But it's not being mekel is not necessarily a result of being smarter. And being smarter doesn't mean you're going to always be mekel. It's two unrelated.
Chapter.
Rabbi Zerkin said before that the Altar's opinion on Dina B'nachos Adina, but please elaborate on it.
The emes, it's a share for itself. It's not in the 60 seconds that was allotted, or even 120 seconds. But the question is, it's for everything. Some people want to say that you're not allowed to cross the street even because it's in the middle, because it's the B'nachos Adina. The Altar seems to imply that it's specifically in a king where there's a king that owns the land and that is for tax purposes. And separately, not really doing the chutzah, where that you have to keep the land running in a manner of yashus. That's the general.
Zalter.
Aren't you supposed to use your chushim for your tafkid and avodah in your life? You use your chushim for your avodah. Avodah b'chal in this world. So what if in your avodah because then what if guitar is your chush? Use that chush for.
Guitar is your chush. Guitar is something, an instrument is something that you learn. You go and you ring it. Someone's more like a chila than you know. Usually the musical, something you could say, I think. I mean, I'm not so bucky, but usually somebody's musical, so he's gonna like the, you know, so you could easily hop on, give him the keyboard, and you know he easily learns how to do it. The guitar, from what I understand, is usually something because he sees it and he likes that kind of environment. He starts taking yes, there you do a lot of learning to even run them that someone's pushes dafki on a guitar. I'm not familiar with that. But is that the case? That somebody's he has a very good like a dad and not in something else.
People that play only guitar.
But there are different
only
guitar. There's different. There's a navel, the chinar. There are other phases which are similar to that.
That's what they were.
They're not musical enough to do other stuff.
Could be that same push is also combined with a navel, the chinar, and other things which are similar. Similar to guitar.
Otherwise, it's not a chush. It's because they learned how to use it. It's not the.
Again, if somebody, again, I didn't say it to us, but then the base of the Rav was known that they didn't do it because it wasn't given to me. So it shows that we'll try to get something like that. We know that every whole Karabach not to go with this guitar. Guitar has something that you have to be very careful. If somebody's very good and he's doing that for Parnasseh and whatever, then it's not us what they can think. And we'll try that that's his talent, and he's tackled something, a certain talent just in that, and he's tackled very good in that, then I will tell him, go ahead.
Should we listen to guitar?
It's not a problem.
All music has guitar.
But you always have to be careful with the average that comes out. A lot of things could be very, very kosher. But if you picture, okay, when someone says, okay, there's a, you know, there's a people walking in the room 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, there was a guitar, usually they already understand already. The average, again, laugh that. A lot of times you can be very essential learning, you can even carry a lot of giving again, and be done in a very good way. But it's something which with that cloud, which you have to keep your eyes open and be very careful that it's being used for this.
Any other questions? JJ. Sorry, everybody, I need you guys to be quiet because it's hard to hear, especially in the back. So if you're not going to listen, please be welcome to go out, but we want to hear this. JJ.
This question is for all 3 intelligent rabbis. What's your opinion on crossfire, and would you do it again?
I said, I mentioned by the Tabrengan that I think it should be, the Bacham should be sitting here and the Hullah should be asking questions, so the Bacham should have some way that maybe it should be the opposite. There should be different ideas, something that should make the Bacham themselves think and learn. So just making an Hullah sit and lever is a nice thing, but again, it's just like another thing, which an Hullah has to go and do. So it's in a way it's like an easy way out for the Bacham. It's a good thing. I'm not saying it's not, but everything takes work. So the Bacham would roll up their sleeves, and they would also be part in a way the same kind of work that they're demanding from an Hullah, so that it makes sense.
Any other questions?
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
You want me to answer? This was, I don't want to be Magal too many say this right now. So. Anyway, that's, as Razev mentioned, the point is that the Bachram should learn how to think and learn how to respect each other and talk to each other. That was the original point of this. And myself, at least, I don't know for the other Anhola, I agreed to it so that they could see that there is a possibility of talking to another person and having a conversation and learning how to talk. But that's what it's supposed to be. So would I do it again? Yeah, in theory I would do it again, but it should be for Bachram that work one with another, in groups perhaps, or whatever it is, to learn how to talk in different subjects to get and disagree or agree to disagree, whatever words you want to use.
Any other questions?
Wait.
Sorry.
Put it in Q&A.
Any other questions?
Kids are dumb.
You don't.
The wow speaker thing, like, is there a real answer at the end?
The question was worded, what did the Rebbe say about it, not what you're supposed to do.
Oh, so, is it okay to eat non-speaker?
It's a new question.
Also, what about
Not on
Sam
camera.
Haxer?
What?
What about Sam Haxer in general?
A whole new question. It's even a newer question than the first one. Huh?
Next crossfire.
There was a parent which the kid, which was the yeshiva, the parent told his Bacher told his parents that in the fridge of somebody working in yeshiva, he saw meat which was not a Lubavitch hechsher. So the parent didn't send that Bacher to that yeshiva next year. There's a lot of people which are very stark about it. And that's why you just go and say, you think somebody wants to, these are things which are not for a camera and even maybe not even for a rabbi. If somebody has a thing and he wants to, he thinks a certain thing, he wants to come over to discuss it, it's probably better that these young men are more one-on-one.
All right, Malka.
The same topic of the Lubavitch Shechita. Isn't there like a story with they asked one of the Rebbeim if they should have a Lubavitch Shechita or a Lubavitch Rav, and he said the Shechita is more important?
I started off saying it is Chassidish Shechita. So it was Chassidish. The person was a person, a chassid. The Lubavitch Shechita is a new term that's recent. Oh, yes, indeed. For the chassid to be a shechita, that was always very good. That story is from the Samach Tzedek.
On that same note, the Fide Gerev was mentioned. The Fide Gerev himself ate from the shchita from somebody which didn't even have a beard. The Fide Gerev was this person, the Fide Gerev ate from that person shchita. Then you have people which go totally to the other side. Somebody mentioned something about satmer. So we had in the past Bacher that there was the milk that the Baruch Hashem they found milk that had on it only satmer shchita. So they took all the milk and only had a satmer shchita. So they took all the milk and they poured it down the sink. So if you're asking me, I think that's going too far. But if you want to hear any more details exactly what my opinion is, then obviously welcome to go, yeah.
That's something, product that's specific based on actually the Rabbanim kind of asking. So that's the big this whole shchita.
What? Which? Talking about right now. There's something right now which has the saturation.
Yeah.
So what you do so let's see. Even Adem and then even
it says this plugin is chal until actually it's in the
a lot of the Rabbanim don't say that. A lot of them don't say. I know that in Torah it says that the Mitzrim, it says that the Doyer Shlishi, even the Mitzrim which torture the Yidden, Yidden were Mitzrayim, says Doyer Shlishi or Doyer Shlishi Mitzri is allowed to come, is allowed to be in his Gari, is allowed to come into Klal Yisrael. But I guess Satmar, another Yid, which today it's known how much they come and they have connections with Chabad, and Satmar himself comes and visits Chabad, and you can see clearly the Shalom. And I was asking to say that they're even worse than the Mitzrim. That wouldn't be my opinion that the Rebbe would still say to stay away from anything which has an extra.
Rabbanim that were part of that Beis Din, they themselves said that doesn't apply to them.
They didn't put them in the Bachsar. The original one they said put them in the Bachsar.
But they said, I heard him from myself, one of the Rabbanim, that he said doesn't apply. He himself eats it.
And when you have a suffix which things which have to do with Shalom and Machlekes, this and that, I'm very likely to believe that the Rebbe would say
Allah is Allah.
Machlekes is also.
All right. Any other questions besides for that topic, Nelson?
Yeah, right. Based on what you were saying about the the sin, monitoring it versus teaching the kids the easier way. You're speaking about the phones, and you said that there's two ways how to do it, which is going, watching the small details that they're doing, versus educating kids the right way how to use it, right? So my question, how's Yeshiva for that?
I wouldn't say versus.
I
wouldn't say versus, both. They have to be understanding. There's a monitoring that listening to them, and at the same time there has to be education and understanding and explaining what's going on. But that's together with monitoring. That's my understanding here.
Any other questions? Coleman.
So you said that by Mashiach, every day you're supposed to wait for Mashiach, but also, are you supposed to think every moment Mashiach's coming?
I think the Pashtup shot is that you're waiting every single day. That's the Lashon, that I'm waiting and anticipating. I'm not just waiting, it would be nice that Mashiach comes. That it would be, I wouldn't be surprised if Mashiach's coming. I'm not saying Mashiach's coming in 3 months from today. I'm not making any times. If you say a certain time, that means like right now I have a few days of Mashiach's not coming. Today, the Erev Shabbos, probably Mashiach's not coming every Shabbos. It has to be clearly in someone's dream that Mashiach could come today, and I want him to come today, and I'm waiting for him to come today. That's what, litzboy on top of someone's waiting, anticipating, and obviously the stronger somebody waits, that's more of a source, that's more what's demanded from anybody. A lot of times it was waiting, Mashiach should mamish come now, and this and that. So then, people had a feeling, hey, Mashiach should mamish coming now. But my understanding is that there isn't like a chiyuv or something for somebody to believe that I know that Mashiach is coming today.
And so there is a chiyuv, but
there's no chiyuv to know that Mashiach is coming today. If that's Mashiach is coming today, then I guess your question makes much more sense. Second, I knew Mashiach was coming, yes, Mashiach didn't come, so now I'm wrong. But if you say that I'm waiting for Mashiach, and that's it, everyone knows, the ganze Yiddish Welt knows that everyone has the Simonim, Chassidus is all here, until Mashiach, and right now there's a time like we were never before, there's no Nasi. It's all like the last steps before Mashiach. So every day Mashiach doesn't come is now all, so now the anticipation and the, okay, so Mashiach, it's like less days for him to come now, so now it becomes more imminent that, okay, that Mashiach is coming now.
Okay, but it's one of the 13 imams that Mashiach's coming in her.
But I know that Mashiach's for sure going to come, and I'm waiting for him every day.
So you should think, or you should not think? You should believe, but not think.
Right, it's a very strong hope and wait and anticipation. But not that I am waiting to say, I know today Mashiach's coming today. When someone asks me when Mashiach comes today, Mashiach's coming today for sure. I'm hoping so much, and I believe in it so much that Mashiach's coming. I can't imagine that in 10 years Mashiach's not going to come here. I'm not going to buy something, a stock which is only going to make money in 10 years because I think it's like Mashiach's sure going to be here by then.
So it's a possibility, but it's not
a possibility, but you have to wait for everybody knows that there's a possibility, right? I mean, whoever believes in Mashiach, but it has to be more than that. It has to be a chakali the whole year.
Any other questions?
About the question that was how to find someone's purpose in life. You said that a lot of times people have different things that they do, and usually people have like simonim signs that they're good at something, or they eventually have simonim that which way in life. But especially a lot of times with young people, younger people tend to change their mind a lot, and people sometimes get a lot of different simonim. People sometimes are confused. They have on the one hand they feel they want to be shliach or rub or whatnot, and then on the other hand they don't care for that and they want to be something else. So a lot of times they're conflicting. So I think the question was, how do you actually figure that out?
So first of all, the question is a real question. And I don't know if you can go by 20 pages in English Kodesh without somebody asking, but that's something similar to that question, like what should I do? Basically, because for somebody finding his purpose and where he belongs is not easy. That's part of just like someone's tafel. When it comes to finding a shidduch, that says it's salvation. It's something you have to work on. You have to go on. It's not from the easier to mean. It's something which you have to go and look for. That's why I mentioned that it's something. That's why I mentioned that you should ask somebody, because these are things which you see. You always ask the Rebbe, and the Rebbe never said, "What are you asking me for?" This and that, or just it's something which the Rebbe always took serious in guiding somebody where he's supposed to be. Now, if somebody has the opportunity to work in kedusha, everything the Rebbe always chooses that. the person always out to be in the day. If someone has the opportunity to be a malamed, to be something involved in Kedusha, I can make much more money and this and that, and I could be whatever. The Rebbe usually doesn't like that, because the Rebbe put you in a place where there's less nisyonis, and it's in a holier place. That has to be your tafkid. Obviously, going out in the world has its milas, maybe even more than that, but that's after the fact that you see that that's where the Hashgach Al pushed you. So then you do that, and you have to know that it's not only lower than having a job in Kodesh. It has a milah, also being a Baal Asik. So if someone's conflicting between a Rav and this and that, whatever, then he has to choose the holy one. If someone sees that he has unbelievable talents in Yonim from the Neilam Hazah, Askoners, or in any kind of business like that, if somebody already started something, let's say somebody went to college or whatever, and the Rebbe says, yes, use that out. You already learned this and that. You learned whatever, continue that. You have a certain koyak, and it's quite obvious. Continue that. When you see somebody that that they're somebody, you also look at how much hashpah you could have. If somebody could leave from one place to another place he's going to have more hashpah. It's going to have an effect on more yidden, and then the Rebbe is okay with that. If somebody just wants to go for his own benefit, I want to go to Israel because it's a holier place. If Yidden are going to get affected from that, because you're going to have less hashpah on Yidden, the Rebbe disagrees with that. Because the tachlis of Yidden and Shalom is to serve the Eibishter and to be mayfits, the oil from the Eibishter all over the world. So that is always the nekudah which somebody has to. Someone has to drive. So somebody could have his avodah in Kodesh, teaching, spreading Yiddishkeit, whatever. That's where he has to be. If someone knows that's for sure not for him, and he's never. That was the Eibishter gives everybody talents, and someone which is more builder, so he's a manager, he's an accountant, someone which is very smart and sharp and knows how to do crossfires, and he's a lawyer. If somebody, you have people that from when they're younger, they like shchita, the whole thing in the reserve. Maybe that's a certain kav. Maybe that's, that's taka. Where they're supposed to be. But everybody, Hashgacha always makes it. You should hear whatever you need to hear, and you should meet the right people. You should have the connection with the right people, which that generally guides them. And somebody shouldn't try to fight it too much. Somebody goes and sees it doesn't work, whatever. You always has to ask himself, maybe what the Eibishter hasn't planned for me was wherever I was before. That's better. And he should have his eyes and ears open to be makabel. What's his tafkid? Not only where he desires, and where would sound or if he would be living.
You get 3 more questions. So Mayor Levy.
But at the same time, don't we say what's hardest for you? That's your avoid a lot of times. The Yetzer Hara tries
That's more in Kodesh itself. It's that when somebody doesn't like Chazara, or somebody doesn't like davening, just like whatever. So exactly where you don't like. Maybe you're supposed to. You're supposed to break your. I don't think in general talking about something like wherever he doesn't like. If somebody likes learning with Racham and he doesn't like just like he doesn't like Farbrengen. Yeah, so it means that he's supposed to only Farbrengen his whole life. He's not supposed to teach whatever. That's what someone learns. That's what he has a chayes. That's what he's supposed to do. Somebody's supposed to do and be involved in general with something which he has a chayes. If someone is not doing something proper, let's say he's not chazri, because the Yetzer Hara is whatever, so he has to know. He's not doing chazara and his learning, because that's where the Yetzer Hara is whatever. So he has to know that the Yetzer Hara is putting up a very big fight and making it hate it because it's so important.
Very relevant. You mentioned before with Rashi's daughter that she woke up or whatever it was, and the more recent source that with she named a different neshama. Could that be applied to nowadays with someone who comes to be or says calls themselves transgender? Could that be a?
This was a holy woman. It was obviously that she was holy, and then she reached a different level of holiness. People that today that are not really holy.
The woman of the wall.
But just to clarify, was that person saying that they now identify as a man, or are they just saying that they?
No, she didn't go to shul in the Zen section. She stayed at home and davened at home. She really started learning Gemara and Tosfos, but she didn't go out to the world and go here. She was in the Bas Yisrael school.
Okay, I'm gonna take one more question. Any more questions? Feel free to go over to the Holo when you have a chance, but obviously don't be too pushy. And obviously, the last thing I want to say.
People have a question, so you could answer. You could take 2.
Fine. And there's 2 more things before we're done. I just want to thank Holo again for doing this. It's not easy, especially with the Shabbos and their families and everything, and taking the time to research. So I want to give a big thank you to them. That's number 1. probably wouldn't get. I hope that each and every one of you, including me, I think that this is also a big opportunity we could use to respect them more from this and just bichlal and taking time to answer questions on a regular day, whatever you're doing, say that you don't like feel so like respecting them. Remember this and all right, another question posed. This question, Avi.
Can you just example what you were talking about? Donating an organ to a guy.
Donating organs.
What do you want to know?
You're like, no, fine.
I was in the middle of talking, and I was given a 60-second allotment, which is what I aimed. But it's hours and hours, hundreds and thousands of pages were written on the subject of what is death, what is not death. Could you donate organs? Could you not donate organs?
Like if you passed away, if someone passed away.
In general, after somebody passes away, as a yid, we say a lot that you came from the ground, and Allah Fartashav, you return to the ground. Therefore, as a yid, it is much stricter in regard to donating a organ post-mortem, after death that is, versus somebody who wants to do the mitzvah, machlek is if it's a mitzvah or a chiyuv. The mitzvah in general is what is accepted as of donating an organ. And generally you're saving somebody's life, and it's a mitzvah, but not everybody has the will, the courage to go and give up a kidney or half a liver. After you're dead, however, there's a chiyuv, there's an isser of giving up from your body. There is pikuach nefesh of another person, but at that point it's not in your choice anymore to give your body over to somebody else. What? So obviously there's a machlekes, but the general bigger consensus. There's some want to say that a cornea you could donate, other want to say that skin you could donate. This is many shittas, but the overreaching is that it's much stricter after death than pre-death.
Yeah, but how are you supposed to give somebody a heart?
What?
If someone needs a heart, how are you supposed to give them a heart?
It's a good question.
What do you do?
So you take from a non-Jew who already did it.
Well, that's like.
But a yid cannot donate it.
What if the person's about to die and you put like a fake heart? What if he's like about to die and you put like a fake heart?
I don't understand the question.
Is he allowed to donate his heart? He's still alive.
So let the other guy put in a fake heart.
No, like a fake heart is very complicated to walk around.
Right. So why this guy over the other guy? Why is this guy's blood redder than the other person's blood?
Well, I gave reason there.
So you're not allowed to cause somebody to die faster.
Sure, not going to be within 10 days.
But I'm still not allowed to choose. Still not allowed to kill somebody.
You're not giving him another heart, which is for sure going to live.
Love that. To put the guy through such a thing is very tough on the body. If the guy is very weak, to put him through such a thing, it's not such a simple thing.
What? He's willing to do that. He's still alive.
He's willing to give his heart over and put a different heart in himself. It doesn't sound right.
Okay, any other questions?
He didn't prepare that much.
No, it's the first time hearing such a question. It's a very.
Okay, anything else? Different topic completely. This is the last question, then you're going to go into your hall.
With regards to the topic of.
Okay, sorry. The only way you're going to everybody's quiet. If you don't want to be that responsive, please don't make it loud. It's very hard to last like a few minutes. So if you're going to be loud, please somewhere else, please. But don't come here.
Yeah. With regards to the topic of the transgender, it's not allowed, right? So if it's not allowed, then someone's not allowed to be like, oh, they want to be soul, right?
Somebody's trying to
what's it should be punishable with something, right? What's that?
Karas?
If it's cars, then
1 second. What's punishment of sitters? He's not allowed to come into. He's not allowed to get married.
Right.
And I don't remember offhand what else is punishments for citizens.
What's he doing exactly? I didn't understand
The question is he allowed to do it? No, he's not allowed to do it. If a person's coming, he wants to do tshuva, and he comes to the Chavad, Rabbi, I'm a transgender, male to female, female to male. I want to start doing tshuva. What is my how do I go about it? I want to start coming to synagogue, or as situations come, some people. It's very classy, if you want, for some people to let's go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah or whatever it is. I was speaking to a shliach. He found out after a long time. Somebody told him, this person, he's been dominating the shul for a long time. He's actually a she. He's been dominating in the shul, and the rabbi shook his hand many times, possibly even got aliyahs. What's he supposed to do? The reality is, the person is Jewish. He didn't ask the rabbi, could I walk into the synagogue? The shul, especially Chabad, is a very open situation. We're very accepting, right?
But
So now you want to know, what are we supposed to do? In that particular scenario, this rabbi, I spoke to him one-on-one, I was by him, and he said, so I told him he's not allowed to shul anymore, he has to go to the third section. He was of the opinion that not everything could have tshuva.
All right, any other questions? Please go to hello and the other chance. Again, thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you.